Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank all the panelists for an engaging conversation. I believe it provided an overview of what's happening in the waste sector in Saudi at present. Thank you, Anas, for moderating the waste management session. We now have a presentation from Hani Abdul Razak, Principal Sustainability Consultant at AESG. Hani is a civil engineer with over 10 years of experience in sustainable design and construction. Hani led the development of KSA's green building rating system and also provided strategic advisory support in relation to its operations. Hani is also a qualified True Zero Waste advisor, providing support in waste management strategies for new developments. He has also been involved in providing strategy consultancy to various developers in relation to sustainable cities and master planning. His experience includes development of sustainability guidelines, policies, as well as implementation of corporate sustainability strategies. Over to Hani.
Thank you very much, Swaliha, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to join this exciting series and really appreciate considering me in this one. So if I may just first present my screen. Yeah, so I guess like the screen, I will just like move to full mode screen right now. So basically first, I just want to kind of give a bit of an introduction about what we want to talk about. So basically, I mean, the topic that I have picked to really kind of share thoughts on is like, while let's say the title is not necessarily very specific, but I mean, we want to talk about how we can really manage waste in a more sustainable way. And the focus about this session is more towards like the best practices to change behavior. But before we go into the technicalities, maybe like we just want to take the opportunity and maybe give some introduction about ASG and myself. So as Swaliha introduced, so Hani Abdul Razak, Principal Consultant in ASG. So what we do in ASG is that we are a specialist consultant and one of the consultants with like a good number of awards, if I can say. And our core services are mainly 7, and it started with sustainability and environment, and the company grew and expanded to consider facade, engineering, commissioning, building performance, fire and life safety, and strategy and advisory. We are headquartered in Dubai, and we have offices in Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, London, and Singapore. In general, we are around 160 employees, and we are growing week by week, considering the rapid movement in the construction industry. And in the near future, we are also like expanding into Australia as well. So this was just a brief introduction about ASG. From my side, I mean, I guess Swaliha gave a bit of introduction. So I come from civil engineering background with strong work experience in the sustainability field. Lately, I managed the development of the Mustadam rating system for Saudi Arabia. This was just before I joined ASG, and I guess everything is really moving rapidly in Saudi Arabia. And I'm really happy that I will be sharing thoughts on the waste management topic here today in this session. Now, as the main topic here is about changing behavior, my thoughts were just to kind of start with some key facts. And one of the main key facts that I want to shed light on here today is that what's the general like kind of daily waste generation per capita. And as per the General Authority of Statistics, this is 1.7 kilograms per capita, so per person. These facts are coming from the General Authority of Statistics as per the report that was published in 2018. So if we kind of like try to evaluate, but at this time, we are also expecting a new version of the statistics. So we are also anticipating that this number is going slightly down to something around 1.5. Now, what we want to do also here is that to think more about this number. So if we try to kind of like evaluate the total waste generated daily by the population in Saudi Arabia, we're thinking about more than 59 million kilograms. And this is just in one day. I mean, we tried also to think about how big this waste is, we translated this number to number of 40 feet containers. And the number is significantly high. And we can see also from the slide here that we are talking about almost 27,000 containers that will fit all of that waste in it. So why we are sharing all of these figures here? I mean, there are certain facts that we want to kind of like highlight. I mean, in terms of the landfill, I mean, the dump site can be a significant like source of environmental pollution. While we know that we are dedicating this land for like kind of disposal of waste, however, I mean, we are also aware that this is generating some pollution. We first talk about the air pollution and the amount of ozone that is being like kind of generated by the accumulation of the waste. Also, like in terms of like risk of fire, I mean, if this like dump site is kind of positioned near or like against wind, we might like see some kind of fire events, or it might kind of impact the surrounding areas. Another factor here is that the ground and surface water, although let's say, I mean, most of the landfills are being kind of managed in a proper way and kind of identified in areas where we have less environmental impact. However, we know also that there are initiatives right now to kind of suspend any open landfills or open dump sites in specific like kind of small regions or small cities within Saudi Arabia. And this is a big move that will really help in kind of moving towards a more positive impact to the environment. And finally, also here, I mean, if we think about the insects and the diseases, definitely this is something that will influence in terms of the landfill and the insects that will like come. And finally, I mean, there is also the odors, the bad odors that will be impacting the surrounding environment, even if like the nearest urbanized area is like far by I don't know how many kilometers, there will be still like an impact to the surrounding environment. So that's really important, and we wanted to share and a spotlight on this one, because I mean we are acting towards this, and ideally we need to kind of eliminate the expansion of landfills. Now, we know that our targets are very ambitious, and as per the SIRC, I mean, the kingdom is targeting to divert 100% of the solid waste, 60% of the construction waste, and 85% of industrial waste. And these targets are by 2035. And we see already that there are initiatives and projects that have already initiated and started working, and this is very positive. But if we think about the overall, like, let's say plan or like ambition that we are looking at, I mean, these numbers are coming from the newspaper, and we can see that the work needed is massive, and it will require a lot of like kind of commitment, effort, and cost in order for us to achieve these targets. However, this is very positive because, I mean, the contribution of proper management of waste will really contribute into around 120 billion riyals to the GDP. And this is definitely either in terms of savings in kind of environmental pollution maintenance or rectification, or like finding or like forming new jobs in the waste sector. So all of this is really important, and definitely is helping us towards these targets. Now, in terms of like the recycling facilities that are being established, this is like the first act that we are considering. However, and this is the focus of this presentation, there is also the part of really the influence to the public and society and every single stakeholder, because behavior needs to change immediately in order for us to achieve these targets. And this is a fact that all other cities have been like kind of facing. And this is why I personally picked this topic to kind of share more thoughts on why behavior is an essential part of really managing waste in a proper way. Now, to start our conversation about behavioral change, I mean, the first thing, and this is as per also the EPA, American EPA, like typical waste sector stakeholders. I mean, if we look at this illustration here, if we need to identify stakeholders, I mean, we need to consider everyone, from the government all the way to every single resident and potentially visitor. And the way that we kind of identify, interact, and let's say mandate certain decisions to stakeholders differ from one stakeholder to the other. So it's really important in terms of like how we want to kind of integrate with the stakeholders. So as per the EPA best practices, the first actual step that needs to be done is like kind of what they call is getting organized, which in other words is about really gathering information. So the statistics that we just looked at is one of the very first, or one of the main information, like, or pieces of information that we need. However, in order for us to really get organized and identify all possibilities and all challenges, we need to go into very deep details in order to understand, like, for example, based on regional coverage, which types of waste will be like kind of the stressing ones, based on the built asset operational functions, which waste will be generated more, and how we will need to kind of consider it, and what are the other possibilities that we can integrate. Like, we are aware, for example, that SIRC just recently announced, I think the first run of the waste to energy plant, and this will really significantly help. However, we need to understand what's next for that actual plant and the more other plants that will be taking part in the next following years. How we can also kind of integrate with the private sector. What we need to do also in terms of like the other stakeholders, in terms of their waste generation and their influence. So this is like in terms of getting organized. Now, if we think about the participation, so we are expecting, sorry, the participation from every single stakeholder, but we need to understand how we want to kind of connect or like have the conversation with each stakeholder. And the best practice is that we go into sequence. So first of all, we identify the stakeholders that we need to consult. So definitely here we talk about local governmental entities, jurisdictional governmental bodies, or any other like kind of national entity that will be mandating or influencing how my strategy will be established for the country. And definitely here, I mean, what is important is that we want to receive input in terms of what we are thinking about, how these stakeholders will be kind of supporting or driving or even impacting the strategy. The feedback needs to be analyzed before any decision gets made. And this is really important. Now, the next step about this is that once we gathered this feedback and we consulted the specific key stakeholders, we need to inform. And in information, it's about like informing all the stakeholders about the effect or like the impact that they will be receiving based on our decision. So based on the targets that has been set, each stakeholder will be impacted into a certain level. Even the residents will be impacted by let's say, the need of changing behavior. And we need to know how we want to change behavior. What will be the possibilities of waste management that will be secured by any governmental entity or even private entity that will be taking part in the overall sustainable waste management. And then like after that is about like really understanding how we want to involve every single stakeholder. So if we are thinking about the residents, I mean, we need to understand based on what are the aspects that we need to involve the residents in, or like in terms of like the academic institutions, is it related just to awareness? Is it related to research and development? And for private companies, which type of like kind of initiatives from the waste management we want to kind of partner with private companies? Is it just for collection or recycling, or it's the overall mandate, or are we kind of subsidizing certain services? So all of this is really important in order for us to really like develop a robust plan that will enable us to achieve our targets. Moving forward, I mean, the plan will continue, and after we kind of understand how we will be getting each stakeholder to participate, we need to assign roles and responsibilities. So everyone needs to be understanding their role and responsibility. So from as simple as the residents or the users or the consumers. Each one needs to understand what's like their commitment or responsibility towards better waste management. And each stakeholder, specifically the key ones, needs to be accountable to achieve these goals. So if our strategy is kind of considering partnering with certain private companies to achieve certain facilities, then everyone is accountable. Or for example, if we are setting certain targets for certain sectors, or like if we are aiming to tackle certain type of waste from the industrial units, everyone in their operations needs to consider that. So we might impact operational procedures and say in certain activities to enable us to achieve this. And this is a long journey towards circular economy, and it definitely needs actions from the immediate first step. Um, and while we are assigning roles and responsibilities and we start this activity, we need also to have the two-way conversation. So we need the input from stakeholders. So even if it's from the start of the strategy or throughout achieving these targets, we need to always have the two-sided conversation to allow for feedback, whether by the governmental entities, private sector, or even public and residents. So we need to understand what is working perfectly and what needs to be kind of refined. Because we might also realize that if we are mandating certain diversion of a type of waste, it might be that the feedback from the community that it's not feasible right now because, I mean, the market availability of the recyclable elements is not yet there. So we need to kind of have that feedback to continuously be received. And this also relates to having more like continuous surveys and feedbacks and interviews and engagement. And this is definitely is kind of more active right now by SIRC, Muwan, and other entities. And it's really like significantly helping the industry towards more sustainable waste management. Now, the final step here, and it's one of the biggest, is the education and awareness. So every single member of the community and society needs to be kind of educated about the importance of what we are speaking about from sustainable waste management. And I kind of prepared a separate slide about this because it's really, I mean, from experience and also looking at certain research papers about other cities and other countries, raising awareness is a seriously long journey. And this kind of illustration I took from one of the environmental awareness reference books. I mean, I'm not going through it into details, but I kind of found it very interesting that in order really to raise the awareness from understanding the reality of environmental consideration all the way to acting, it's a very, very long journey. And it like requires a lot of like kind of progressive activities in order to really get everyone in society to act accordingly. Because I mean, it will not be always enough to have like campaigns or like mandating certain things. It needs to be a combination of different activities. So some of the best practices like kind of promoted by many governmental entities around, like let's say GCC area and Middle East and beyond. I mean, I have listed these here on the side. So like national campaigns on environmental challenges, and we know like what are the challenges that we are all facing, and we know that our environment and our like temperature in GCC is very hot and severe. So we need to act accordingly. And this will also like relate to other environmental aspects, whether it's natural resources, whether it's groundwater and other aspects, because waste will always impact that. And like the way that you tackle waste is seriously detailed, and we don't need to go into that much details. Another thing is about regular surveys. So we need to have these regular surveys to continue raising awareness about it. And it will feed us information so that we kind of refine our approach moving forward. And this is really one of the important things. Market campaigns is like kind of different from national campaigns in terms of like more kind of commercialized campaigns rather than general campaigns that are just raising awareness from responsibility point of view. And it can be kind of initiated by governmental entities or even private sectors. And it's really interesting because you will find companies competing into each other towards more sustainable practices. And this is really helping the overall waste industry to be more sustainable. And finally, community initiatives, and we see this really active in Saudi Arabia by, for example, certain campaigns for beach cleaning or desert cleaning and other aspects. And it's really putting extra value on the overall waste management, and it's raising awareness, especially in the like kind of youth part of the population, because those are this is the future generation that will be like kind of more responsible than us in terms of like how we want to manage our waste. On the commercial side, I mean, some of the things that will really help in increasing awareness is like introducing more like kind of rigid or robust fees and taxes towards like how we are managing waste, collecting it and disposing it. Sometimes also incentive programs, and we will talk about this in more details in the following slides, penalties, financial support to recycling industries, or like any kind of support, not necessarily financial, it could be also non-financial, to any entity that is promoting recycling. Not necessarily that this entity or facility is actually doing recycling, but it's promoting it. And this is really something important. I will go to the next slide just to kind of save on time. Now, also like taking some of the takeaways, let's say, from many research papers and other activities really happening around us in Saudi Arabia and outside. I mean, we just wanted to list a few things here about what are the kind of, let's say, the big ticket items or like the easy wins here that will really help us to kind of improve in a more rapid way, because the journey is big, and in order to achieve diversion of 100% of solid waste, it will really involve every single activity that we have on daily basis. But those are just like key activities that are very successful around us, and I'm sure that different entities are taking these into consideration. So from the consumer side, I mean, we are talking about promoting reusable consumers. So we eliminate plastic usage or like one-time use products. And for example, like whenever we are using these disposable products, we introduce certain charges on it, whether it's in the customs or whether at disposal, it could be anything. And we know for a fact that here in GCC, we are all facing a big issue about food waste. So specific entities needs to act in a more responsible way towards food waste. And here maybe one of the main sectors is hospitality, because we know like there is a big waste generation coming from hospitality at certain events, certain seasons. So that also could help us in kind of better sustainable waste management. From the construction industry point of view, we need to kind of promote designing for durability, flexibility, and disassembly. This all like kind of thinking and from design stage will help us in eliminating certain quantities of waste that can get generated either during construction or at operation. Another thing, and we see it becoming more and more used in Saudi Arabia for housing sector, and some of the giga projects is using precast and modular systems. These technologies are really enabling us to, first of all, save in certain costs of the development and time, and also will help us in eliminating certain unnecessary waste from the, for example, the cast in place concrete or other aspects. And finally, I mean, in terms of rethinking our material selection. So when we are designing certain developments or assets, if we can introduce more recycled content to certain big ticket items, such as like elements going to substructure and superstructure, this will kind of help in the overall circular economy or circular carbon economy as well. So all of this will feed in, whether directly or indirectly, to better waste management. From the manufacturing side also, I mean, it's about innovative practices towards more or better design and limited packaging, and introducing some kind of biodegradable and sustainable material. Another thing here in terms of like reusing and recycling, we want to emphasize more about the avoid of disposable, the reuse of consumables. I mean, if it can be managed, the aim for material that is more recycled. And from the construction industry, I mean, we can also reuse the demolish of waste. And we know that there are big projects of demolition here, happening in Saudi Arabia. So we can definitely benefit from this, whether in sub-base or base, from the kind of crushing of the concrete. And definitely like reusing the construction formwork also will help, or like using certain formwork that you can really use for multiple activities and not just one or two main construction events. And from the manufacturing side, I mean, promoting more composting systems for food waste, especially at food industry, will really help. Forming partnerships with other entities in terms of bulk waste recycling, because we know that certain manufacturers are really generating some bulky items that are going directly to be disposed to landfill, and we can find ways for this. I'm just running quickly here because just to save time, because I know we are a bit tight of time. Finally, I mean, this is the final slide I just want to kind of use here. I mean, and it's an opinion, and I believe majority of the audience will be agreeing with me. Government mandate is a key. Yes, I mean, we want to raise awareness, we want to build more infrastructure, we want to introduce more recycling facilities. However, this will all help, but having a kind of government mandate or certain regulations will really push this in a more rapid way. And yes, we know that our targets are at 2035, but I mean, that is not like kind of long time from now. I mean, if we don't act from now, we might get like kind of challenged towards 2030 and 2035, that we need to do more rapid actions and bigger ones. So some of the best practices that we kind of also wanted to share here from the surrounding area and other places around the world is that, for example, if there could be some introduction of variable rates in terms of like how waste would be collected or disposed. So for example, the business model of pay as you throw could be also kind of encouraging generating less waste. So because I mean, you will be paying less fees if you kind of generate less. Waiver of municipal fees for recycling. Sorry, excuse me. Apologies. So, and in terms of landfill ban, this is also something related to prohibiting the disposable of recyclables. So if it can be managed at landfill, that if there is, sorry, a skip that is having recyclable waste, it could be just rejected, because I mean, this can go to a recycling facility. So we need to aim for that. Facilitate recyclable collection services from construction sites. So we can also support that. So if we can generate like or initiate a program that if construction sites can separate recyclables, a specific like kind of company will be collecting that at like kind of supported let's say fees or like sponsored activities. Another thing here is about fines for disposable of recyclables. So in addition to the prohibition, there could be also, or instead we can do, or we can introduce more fines. And based on like practices and experience, small penalties will not really make difference. And this is, I guess, also like it's being into consideration. Local take back, this is very interesting because we know that the industrial sector is massive and significant in Saudi Arabia from the economical point of view. So if we can mandate that the waste can be or must be taken back by suppliers, whether it's scrap or waste or some kind of packaging, this will eliminate certain types of waste. And finally, I mean, we talked about fines and mandate. Now, there is another aspect of rewarding. So we can reward certain suppliers who are committing to sustainability and ESG goals with advantage, for example, in some tenders or some other aspects from the municipal activities. Or we can reward consumers with the more commitment based on like proven record of really recycling the highest amount of waste generation. I'm sorry if I took more time, but I guess that's generally it that I wanted to present, and we'll just see if we have any questions. So there is one question here is about how many organized used car tires dump sites are in KSA and where are they located? To be honest, I mean, I looked at something similar, not necessarily for car tires. On the General Authority of Statistics, I was not able to find like accurate information. I also looked at CAPSARC, I mean, because they have some good amount of or strong database of information, but I was not unfortunately able to identify like such like kind of confirmation of number of sites. So unfortunately, I cannot help in this question. So I mean, if any other questions, I'm happy to answer it right now. Okay, so we don't have any more questions. Thank you very much for everyone who attended. It's really a pleasure to be able to share thoughts on the waste management topic. Yeah, have a nice day.